Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome to another speed build. Today we are going to be building a fairy house on the beach in Sulani for either like a mermaid fairy hybrid or just a water fairy who's friends with all the mermaids and dolphins. I just thought it would be a fun little idea. I'm kind of going with like building a fairy home in almost every world situation. I don't know if I'll continue building them after this, but I do have a few more ideas, so we'll see where they go. But you'll see I just came up with a very simple shape. I was mostly focused on like the roofing and making it look kind of whimsical and fun before I added the roof texture of the like palm leaves and such, because I thought that was, pretty much essential. My main idea was to cover the roof, or at least the trim of the roof, with some seashells. So you'll see me pull those out in a little bit. I did grab them off of the gallery, and then I think I used the same room multiple times just to, continue it, because there's not enough shells in the collection to use a new one every single time. You kind of have to repeat in that pattern, but I think it came out really cute in the end, so I hope you like it. There's also like a little upstairs deck. There's a ladder that goes to the upstairs right from the water. There's no staircase inside the build to get to the second floor because there just wasn't enough room on the inside. It didn't really make a lot of sense, so I thought a ladder up from the water itself was good enough, and I thought it looked kind of cool, so hopefully you enjoy that. I did mess around with the roof for a really long time before I came up with the shape that I was going for. I was, like I said, just kind of playing around, didn't exactly know what I was going for a while, and then I decided on this lovely like greenish blue siding that came with Horse Ranch, because it's kind of beat up and weathered a little bit. Looks like it's been here a while. I was going to use the Island Living siding, but I have overused that in the past with my beach houses, so I was trying something a little different. But I did use the Island Living columns and fencing and stairs, and also the spandrels, because I just love them and they're really fun. I like the heart-shaped one for this because it looks really, really pretty up against the palm frond edging on the roof. And then there's a little kind of dock and ladder situation, also a little sailboat out here. You'll notice the ladder isn't on the back deck all the way. I didn't realize that it wasn't quite there, so I did end up fixing that in the end. But in case you notice it while I was recording, I fixed it, don't worry. So you can actually use that to get out to the ocean and onto the boat. Also added some little awnings upstairs, and I was going to go with all of the Island Living windows at first, but later on I did decide to change it up, and I end up using the Life and Death windows because they come in this really fun like darker green color, and I kind of thought it resembled seaweed. Also, those windows are a little bit beat up, maybe by like the sea air or something, like the saltiness in the air. So that was kind of where I went with that. And then here I was trying to play around with how I wanted to do the upper level, because I kind of wanted to use these glass roof pieces from Island Living, the crystal clear pieces, and then put some vines and like plants on top of that, just kind of like make it look kind of overgrown with some vines. But that was really annoying to have to figure out. I did eventually figure it out, but I also wanted to elongate the upper floor deck a little bit, because I wanted a little bit more space for some skill building items. And I also added a cute little turret roof over here, and I did play around with like sloping it a little bit and not just keeping it so symmetrical in this shape, but I liked it better just as a normal like octagon shape rather than kind of manipulating the curve on it. I thought it looked a little bit better. And then here I am expanding that back deck, like I said, adding another little roof piece and another bump out upstairs. That ends up being like a little office nook area for our water fairy sim. And yes, I'm very excited for when this pack comes out to move the fairies all over all the other worlds and see how they do in Sulani and Chestnut Ridge and Tamarang and all those other fun places. Mount Komorebi, we can have like a snow fairy. I just think that's so much fun. The possibilities are endless, even with the bugs that we've already been seeing and experiencing with everybody's early access. But I'm still excited. I have faith that a lot of those things will be fixed because it is not final software. Hopefully, fingers crossed, they will have that fixed soon, as well as all the other base game update bugs that have been happening. They've been driving me a little crazy. My Sims are all out of whack right now, so instead of playing, I have been building a lot, just because I know that that's going to work for the most part. Here you'll see a lot of vines going in. I used a mixture from Island Living and also Jungle Adventure, because they have some matching kind of bromeliad plants and vines. Like a lot of the flowers in those vines match from both those packs. So kind of combine them a little bit to give this kind of a feel with the vines and the flowers, etc. I just thought it looked really cool, very islandy, and then I just tried to configure them all so that they made sense up against the deck and all along the side of the house. I didn't want to cover it completely because my main focus was to make this, you know, playable for everybody and not overload it with too much stuff and too much clutter, you know, to make it harder to download from the gallery. But you'll see I'm adding some more windows, different shapes and varieties. Those are all from Life and Death, as well as the doors, except for the back deck door. That one is from Desert Luxe because obviously I love that bifold look. It's just really fun. And there's also a little archway out to this little kind of half hexagon shape that just has a little seating area in it eventually. But here's where I'm pulling out the Seashells collection. I'll pop the gallery user's name up on the screen so that you have it in case you want. I'll also put it in the description box in case you want to check it out. But all these collections, being able to pull them off the gallery is so nice because there are some things you can find in debug and live edit, especially if you have organized debug and all those other mods, but there are some things you cannot. Seashells are one of them. They do not show up no matter what I do. So being able to pull them off of the gallery is very nice. And I just kind of move them over, size them up, get them in the right position. Then I use Tool Mod to put them exactly where I want them and change the rotation if I needed to. And I just do that all along the entire roof trim here in the front and off to the right side. And then later on, you won't see it till the very end, I also end up using those to line a pathway from the front door to kind of like the front of the lot where the Sims spawn in, and I think it looks really cool. So, like I said, you'll see that a little later. That's a spoiler. But we have like a little bit of the idea of the floor plan going in. This is our little kitchen. There is a fridge and a stove. I know that fairies typically, they don't really need to eat necessarily, but I figured this Sim has a lot of friends that are either mermaids or humans, and they do need to eat. So having a kitchen, it makes her very hospitable to all of her guests. I thought that was just a nice thing to have just in case. And there's also a tiny little living room over here with the couch from high school years, the chair from Love Struck, this little table right here where the TV is going. That is from movie hangout stuff. And then the TV is that frame TV that came with, oh, I forget. Whatever that one pack was. It came with the first frame TV we ever got. I can't remember. If I do, I'll pop it up on the screen. But really love that TV because it does have a lot of like palm kind of images on it, and I was able to use that really well. And I also had to make this upper level on a bit of a platform, just a one-level platform, because some of the stuff from down below was poking through and it was bothering me. I went with a very green and leafy palm frond kind of theme up in the upper bedroom because I thought that looked really nice. So you'll see a little bit more of that later, more cluttering of that. And but for right now, we're going to be back outside and we're throwing in more of these vines and some of these bromeliad plants. I made it look like they're climbing up either side of the like pillars here because they just look really fun. And you can kind of maneuver them in such a way they blend in ever so slightly. And then more of these vines here. This one's a corner one, and this is from Jungle Adventure. I thought that looked really nice. More of these bromeliads. And then I also throw in like some tall plants that came with Island Living and Jungle Adventure, just like these really big leafy ones, and then some ground cover to kind of blend into where the house meets the beach and then meets the water. I thought that that was also a very good idea. Lots of flowers as well. I didn't know if I wanted to do purple or red flowers, but I think I went with red in the end, just because there's so many other red flowers used in both of those packs. I figured it would be easier to match it if I decided to use some more of those. And then here's some stones going in that lead from the front door to the front of the lot, but I changed my mind in the end, so they'll only be here for a little bit. Pay them no mind. And then we have some more of these really pretty little palm trees and some more bromeliad plants, some more of these big leafy plants, and then I also throw in some more low-lying plants here and some more vines. I do end up trying to kind of cover this ground right here where the ocean kind of meets the beach. Because it's on such a weird angle, I couldn't get the grasses to meet, but I did add some like algae on the top and also some lily pads and some of these pretty lily flowers that came with Love Struck. So I kind of tried to just make my own little lily pad section. I did also add some visual effects in here, but the sparkly one didn't quite look right because it was sitting above the water, and then when I went to lower it with Tool Mod, it just didn't quite work out. So ignore that. That ends up going away eventually. Here's the rest of the roof trim going in on the right side of the home. just a little bit of raising up and then maneuvering around because, you know, had to make sure they were at just the right angle and just the right spot. I didn't really have any rhyme or reason as to which ones I was placing first. I kind of wanted it to look a bit more random, but I think that it worked out really nicely. And I was also trying to think if there was any kind of like kelp or like seaweed that I could put up there. And there is in Debug and Live Edit, because when you go fishing, you can catch seaweed when you're fishing, like a, you know, like a boot or seaweed or driftwood. But they did not look right when I went to place them up there. So I had no way to break it up, and I just gave up on that. I did add some more vines though, and some more flowers, some more climbing flowers. And then over here I add some of these bunches of flowers on this half wall situation, which I end up changing to a fence because I thought it looked better as a fence, and I figured I could use Tool Mod to kind of squish everything together and make it look like one whole plant rather than a couple different pieces just stuck on either side of each other, if that makes any sense. Tool Mod comes in very handy for those kinds of things. It can also be a little tricky. So right now you're just seeing me like click over and over again to get it to move where I wanted it to be. Also added some cool corals and stuff in the ocean and some big palm trees. And out here on the front deck, we just have a couple lights from Island Living. There's a little seating area with some plants from Jungle Adventure. And then off to the other side, I have a potted plant. And then I also end up adding some meditation stuff over there eventually. But we also have a lot of potted plants on the inside, some hanging plants. I really wanted it to feel cozy and kind of plant covered. But again, I wanted it to be very usable. I didn't want you to have any trouble with routing, especially if you have people over, because this is kind of a cramped space. I didn't want anyone to have any trouble getting around. And here in the bathroom, we're using the wallpaper from Jungle Adventure. I thought that would be a really nice touch. There's also a shower and a tub, so whether you're a mermaid or a fairy or a human, you can have a way to bathe. And then we have another little back deck here with a picnic table that came with Island Living. We have more lighting. I think I end up adding more plants out here eventually. But yeah, just a nice cozy little eating area. There's also a tiny dining table on the inside. But I thought having an eating area out here would be nice as well if you're having like a kava party or a cookout with the cooking pit on the beach, which I do end up adding at the very end. I thought it would be nice to have a bunch of places to sit and eat. And then, of course, a little seating area over here with the chairs from high school years, because they're just so pretty and they match the couch on the inside. So why the heck not? And then up here on the upper level, we have a woodworking table, because that is something they've been telling us to use a lot in the new Nature's Calling event. So I figure having a woodworking table might be nice. Maybe you might need that if you're doing some kind of fairy things in your gameplay. Also added some pretty curtains upstairs, and then there's a little desk area with a fancy computer. On the end table, I did try to clutter it up with some everyday clutter stuff. We have like a journal and a water bottle and like a phone and keys, very standard things for having on your end table. And then this lovely rug from Cats and Dogs. I just sized it down ever so slightly because I like, you know, a little bit smaller, but it does fit the room quite nicely. And a couple little pots of like flowers and books and stuff. Those came with movie hangout stuff, and I don't like them normally, but sized down a little bit, they kind of work. Like they're a little scraggly looking. They're a little sharp, but I think in here they worked really nicely. And then we also have a rug from Laundry Day going under the dining table. I also put some pretty flowers from Love Struck on top of the table. And then I wanted to add this pretty, very colorful rug from Jungle Adventure in the living room space. I thought it would be nice to bring in some more color. Otherwise, it's very beige in here. So this is the only place where we have color. I also love that little viney thing over top of the archway. That is from, I believe, Romantic Garden Stuff. And then we have some more wall plants and also some buoys in a net. That's from Cats and Dogs. We have some hanging air plants. And then over here on the front deck, we have our meditation stool and some incense. There's also a hanging plant very quickly you saw in the bathroom. And I pull out a bunch of these like ocean prints that you can get from Debug and Live Edit. And I kind of place them sporadically all about, as well as some curtains. So you'll see some more of those later. And then not filmed, I did also pull out some Sulani paintings from the gallery. So I will put that in the description box down below in case you're wondering where a lot of the paintings you're going to see in the screenshots come from. that was a last minute decision to take up some more wall space because I needed some more art in here and I wanted to get it off the gallery, but I'd already wrapped up all of my filming for this. So here in the kitchen, we have little knives on the wall and then a little shelf from For Rent. I thought that was really pretty. And then in the bathroom, we have some soap on the wall near the sink. And I also added the toilet paper roll and the plunger. I also added the towel rack here from Bathroom Clutter Stuff, put that on the opposing wall, and then I added a little shelf from the Cozy Kitsch kit, and I decided to throw some bathroom clutter on that, so we have like some bath salts and like cotton balls and such, and then there's a little shower caddy next to the tub with all the soaps and the squeegees, and some lotions, and I also end up adding some perfumes on there later. But we have some wall like decals with like a sea turtle and some fish and a narwhal. I just thought they were really pretty, and I don't normally get to use those unless I'm doing a kid's bathroom, so putting them in here just felt right. And one more little dolphin painting, of course. And then the rug I end up using is this one from Debug Live Edit from Nifty Knitting. I just put that in front of the tub because I thought it was really nice. And another wall decoration, just cause, from Island Living. Here you'll see is where I'm taking those rocks away. Just taking those rocks away and instead making a little path with some different sand textures, and I am just going to gather all of these shells and move them down to ground level, size them up a little bit, and then just maneuver them around till they completely cover both sides of this path. And you will notice some of them are floating when I turn the camera, but I did end up lowering them, so no worries there. I was, this was a process. I did not feel like having you sit through the entire process, so you're very welcome. But it was a lot. And then I used the tool mod to just move them down ever so slightly so they're kind of sort of sunken into the ground and not so obviously just placed there on top. And I think that that ended up looking really nice. And then I add some different like sand textures and stuff so that it kind of all blended in well. I also wanted some like darker sand and some dirt underneath all of the plants. And then over to the right side of the lot, you'll see a bunch of low-lying plants and flowers and a little sea turtle sign. Over there, I also add some more terrain paint later on, but I also wanted to add a Debug and Live Edit fence piece from Island Living that kind of like leads you to the beach, but also gives slightly fenced in feeling over here. So this was a labor of love as well. I had to play around with a bunch of the different fence pieces until I was happy with it, and also tool mod, moving things in just the right spot, lowering, raising, etc. Added some tall grass to kind of like hide any little spots where it might be floating because it isn't exactly level terrain. And then we have a fake clothesline over there, and I thought that that really finished off the lot really nicely. That's where she hangs up her clothes, I guess. You know, obviously it's just decorative, but I thought it was fun. There's also like a little fish drying rack out on the front, in front of like some of the tall plants before you get to the pathway. So that's another Debug Live Edit thing that came with Island Living. It's very, very pretty, very nice. Wish we got more of those things in the Build By catalog, but another perk of those is they are free majority of the time. So I guess that's good, right? Over here we have our little cooking pit, and I added some of these coconut chairs because they're just so much fun. And I also end up adding a little end table over there as well, so if you serve food from the pit, you can just put it right on the end table, and then everyone can sit around the pit and eat and talk. And it did work out really well for the welcome wagon, so I think that was a smart decision on my part, if I do say so myself. Just adding a little bit more sand terrain paint, and then we're going to do a little bit more decorating of the rest of the build, because I did add some more decorations outside and inside, especially in the bedroom, because it just wasn't quite complete yet. Out here we have a little lounger over here where the ladder goes up. I thought that was a little nice little thing to have just for chilling out in the water if you're hanging out. And then we have another palm tree over here. That little spot just looked naked, so I added a bush and a palm tree. And I believe I also add some more like low-lying plants and such, just to, you know, give it a little bit more dimension, make it look a little bit more overgrown and fun. And I also wanted to grab some more of these little tiny rocks that came with Island Living because they match really, really well. I have some on the other side of the build too. So tool mod came in very handy, moving everything around so it looks like it's actually sunken into the sand underneath. And I got everything into the right place, and I think it looks really nice. There's also lots of torches around the property to give a little bit more light, but here it is, for the most part, just adding one more little window up to the top roof eave. And here it is at all different times of the day. So I hope that you enjoyed this one, and you can see it's very pretty, very lit up. I also made sure to add a trash can and the mailbox from Werewolves. It's not my favorite one, but in this case, I think it worked out pretty well. The welcome wagon came and we had our sim just cook out for everybody, and they were hanging out before I started the live mode footage, so I hope you don't mind missing out on that. But if you like what you saw here today, please be sure to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments down below what you thought or what you'd like to see next. Are you looking forward to the pack? Are you worried about all the bugs? I'm kind of a little bit of both, so we're all in the same boat here, and we're just gonna see what happens, right? I'm glad I didn't pre-order. I'm just gonna wait it out and see how things go the first day or so. But I might get started on a few builds and preemptively start, until I'm ready to get it. So thank you so much for joining me here today, and stick around for the screenshots. I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye, guys.